Donald Trump has said that Israel will lose all American support if it annexes the West Bank. In an interview with Time magazine, the US president said, "It won't happen because I gave my word to the Arab countries." Hardline lawmakers in Israel's parliament, the Knesset, have backed a bill to apply Israeli law within the West Bank, effectively amounting to annexation. Israel already occupies the area in violation of international law. There will be 3 more rounds of voting before it can become law. US Vice President J.D. Vance said he took the vote as a personal insult.
I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
So do these rebukes from the Trump administration indicate the beginnings of a rift between the White House and the Israeli government? I asked our correspondent in Jerusalem, Emily Gordine.
Well, look, Phil, the Israelis know that they cannot afford any rift with the Americans at this point. The Americans are their strongest, most powerful, most important ally at this point. But let me just recap what exactly happened today. So the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, passed 2 bills to annex the Israeli settlements, the illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and to annex one city settlement, Ma'ale Adumim, which is one of the biggest settlements in the occupied West Bank, that is sort of east of East Jerusalem. All of that amounts to effectively the annexation of the entire West Bank because they occupy so much territory. And then now these bills will now go to committees, and they will still have to pass 3 votes in the Knesset. And political pundits in Israel certainly believe that they will not pass those votes. They will not get the majority in the Knesset because of that opposition from the US. Netanyahu himself has called this a, quote, deliberate political provocation by the opposition to sow discord during Vance's visit to Israel. So he's tried to distance himself from this move. That being said, it is all too well known in Israel that Netanyahu himself is not opposed to annexation. He has been in favor of annexation. He is so ideologically, politically, and he's also said on various occasions that there will not be a Palestinian country, a Palestinian nation. This territory, quote, belongs to us. So he's made it very clear where he sees the territory of the West Bank. The thing is, though, now is that the Israelis really cannot afford to lose support, and that is why there is no, official. That's why they've put a stop to putting this into official policy, essentially, even though the facts on the ground speak for themselves. We've seen over the years, over the decades, really an increase of illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Illegal outposts have flourished. Settler violence runs rampant, effectively displacing hundreds of Palestinians, thousands of Palestinians from their land. So the actions on the ground speak for themselves, but the Israelis at this point cannot make this official policy simply because of the US opposition.
Well, let's explore what's going on with Shalom Lipner, who served in the Israeli Prime Minister's office from 1990 to 2016 under 7 consecutive Israeli governments. He's currently with the Atlantic Council in Jerusalem. Welcome to DW. This action has been attributed to a few hardliners in the Knesset trying to make trouble for the government. Is that your reading of what's happening in the parliament?
Good to be with you tonight, Phil. I think that's a fairly accurate reading. As the president and other principals, American principals said, as you indicated now, there was a lot of symbolism to this. It's very much a preliminary vote, doesn't have much effect in law. It's more an outgrowth of the problems that Netanyahu is having in his coalition right now, which is very unruly. I think, if anything, it definitely, and it certainly embarrassed the president, the vice president, while he was in town, but the prime minister, was very much embarrassed by it as well. And it's part of a tug of war that's going on over here. I think that, notwithstanding what we've seen in the response of Vice President Vance and others, is I think that, there's diminished, shall we say, American patience for Israeli political theater at this time.
Right.
So even if it's just a symbolic move right now, there's a concern in the United States. I think that it also speaks to maybe a growing leadership vacuum in Israel, which will make it hard for them to achieve their goals here if there's not a strong partner around the table.
Okay, so to embarrass the Prime Minister with no expectation of this measure actually being passed?
Well, I mean, again, look, obviously the people that voted for it would like to see it happen. I think that, realistically, they don't see it coming to pass. The Prime Minister, it has been reported extensively, reached out to all the people involved in this action in advance, asking them not to do that and not to pursue it. We've had sort of rising temperature out of Washington in terms of warnings in response to this, right? I mean, as you indicated at the start of our talk as well, the most prominent of that being the president's words to Time magazine right now, his own voice saying that the United States will withdraw all support if annexation went through because it would complicate his agenda in the region. So I think that very much the riot act has been read, and I don't think the Prime Minister can afford to allow for this to advance in any substantive way, but that will not stop his partners who right now are feeling hungry and adventurous and confrontational and wanting to put this up there and indicate to him that just as the president has red lines and the prime minister has red lines, well, his coalition partners may have red lines also, and that could come to a head in the coming weeks.
So, is Benjamin Netanyahu then therefore losing control of his government?
There's reason to assume so. I mean, again, part of what's happening here is that his opposition is very much divided. Were it not for that, we might be in a stronger situation that there'd be an electoral threat. Elections are not supposed to be held statutorily for another year yet. There's much discussion, any expectation that they could be moved forward if circumstances, and that's a whole complicated conversation unto itself, would allow for that right now. But, right now, again, he's very much beholden to the shrinking coalition that he has. And these people are flexing muscles. They have demands. They'd like to see promises made to them kept as well, and are very much feeling, we're in a mood for brinkmanship right now, suggesting to him that if he doesn't meet them somewhere in the middle on things that they want, that they could threaten the continuation of his rule. But again, I think that, the Prime Minister will could only afford to allow that to go to a point, because the bigger elephant in the room is the White House right now. And the president willing to follow through on his threats to withdraw American support. I don't think the Prime Minister will be able to accede to the wishes of his partners. And it would move us closer to that election, even closer than we might be in under other circumstances.
Yeah, let's talk about that American elephant in the room. We have U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arriving in Israel just as Vice President J.D. Vance left. Israeli media now joking about senior White House officials babysitting Israel's government. How much of a bind is Mr. Netanyahu in over the Palestinians, given this increased presence in Israel and his reliance on these coalition partners who want annexation?
There is this rock and a hard place situation. In terms of the Americans, I think you're right. It's very much been noticed. Then, as you say, all those reports of them babysitting the Israeli government right now, call it what you will. I think the question there will be how that continues moving forward. I think obviously right now we're seeing this. We saw the president and Rubio himself and Secretary of War Hegseth come out with him, and then the vice president came back, and now Rubio was met with the prime minister tonight. That meeting has already happened. So, there's very much hands-on right now to be able to see this thing through, and the United States indicate how important it is for them to make sure that this effort succeeds. But again, as I've emphasized many times in recent months, there are many spoilers here as well, and there are realities on the ground as well that complicate matters. And if the president or the United States were to become distracted into other areas, or other people came into the mix, then that effort could maybe not disintegrate, but it'd be harder to get over the finish line. So I think that what we see now is valid for this particular situation. I don't know where we're going to be a few weeks from right now. Where we sit right now, the Americans are very much on top of this, sitting on top of the prime minister. I think it was interesting tonight in the brief comments they made before the press when the secretary left tonight, that the prime minister was emphasizing, he called it, I believe, a circle of trust and partnership with the United States, and talked about Rubio's extraordinary friendship for Israel. But the secretary was all business, talking about working with all the partners and the obstacles in the path, and there's so much work left to do. So I mean, he was sort of pushing away that bear hug to the extent that he wanted to indicate that he meant business.
Okay, good talking to you. Thanks for talking us through that, Shalom. Shalom Libner from the Atlantic Council in Jerusalem.
Pleasure.
Thank you.